Switch case statements can be a great alternative to if statements, especially if you want to execute code for the different states of an enum. So, to create a switch case statement, we first have to write the switch keyword and provide a variable that we want to use for this switch case statement. This variable will be used to evaluate which case we should enter. Next, we have to provide a number of cases. Behind each case keyword, we have to provide a possible constant value that the variable can have. If we pass in an integer, for example, then the value of this variable can be 1 for the first case, 2 for the second case, and 3 for the third case. So, if our variable has the value of 1, then we would enter the first case. And we cannot use conditions like in if statements, so x is less than something. It has to be a constant value, and that's why switch case statements are especially useful for enums. Next, we have to provide a code block for what we want to execute in each case. After the code block, we usually use the break keyword. That indicates that we have found a case that matches the current state of our variable and that we executed the relevant code. By writing break, similar to loops, we basically indicate that the program should leave the switch statement and don't check further cases. If we don't write break, we will continue to execute the code block of the following cases until we have found a break statement or have reached the end of the switch case block. Then we can also provide a default statement. For that, we don't have to provide any value after the default keyword. The default state basically means if we get to this point of the switch case statement, no matter what the current value of the variable is, we will execute the contents of the default code block. For example, if the value of our variable is 4 and we have only cases from 1 to 3, then we have no case for 4 and therefore we will execute the default code block. Maybe it's still confusing for some of you, so let's look at a specific example. So in this example, we provide an integer called counter as the input to our switch case statement. Then we have 4 cases, 0, 1, 2, and 3. Each of those cases would be entered if the current value of counter is equal to the specified value. Lastly, we have also provided a default case that will be executed if no case before matched the current state of counter. For each case, we log a simple message that tells us the current value of our counter variable. So let's say counter is 2. We enter the switch statement and check the first case. The value of counter is not 0, therefore we move to the next case. We can also see that the value of counter is not 1, therefore we again move to the next case. However, now we have a match, since the value of counter is 2. Therefore, we enter the code block of this case statement. First, we log the message, and after that we reach the break statement. This, as previously explained, makes the program jump out of the switch block and continue with the code afterwards. As you can see, we only log counter is 2 and at the end finished switch case statement. What happens if the value of counter is 4? Well, as you can see, none of the cases matches the current value of our counter. Therefore, we enter the default statement and print the message counter is greater than 3 and then leave the switch case statement. Next, let's remove the break statement for the first case and let's assume that the value of counter is 0. What do you think will happen now? We can see that 0 matches the value of our first case. Therefore, we enter and log the message of this case. But next, we don't have a break statement. Because of that, we enter the code block of the next case and also log the message here. Since this code block has a break statement, we will jump out of the switch block. And our log shows what we have just described, namely printing the two messages, and then lastly that we have finished the switch case statement. That shows that you should remember to always place a break statement or be deliberate when not using a break statement, because otherwise you might execute code that should not be executed for a given state. For today's exercise, I show you a code block that uses if statements, and you should convert it to a switch case statement. Like always, if you have any questions, leave them in the comments. Otherwise, see you next time.